Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about loss. Not the dramatic kind that makes headlines, but the quiet kind that slips into your room like dusk, the kind that sits on your chest and stays. Loss of things, people, plans, control. But what if losing something didn't mean you had to lose yourself? What if there was a way to let go and remain whole? You're lying there, maybe staring up at the ceiling or maybe already under a soft blanket. Either way, you've come here because something inside you seeks stillness, not the kind you force, but the kind that grows when you finally stop struggling. Here's your gentle reminder. You will never be able to control the world, but you can always choose how you meet it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you are right now. I always love seeing the beautiful places you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with the feeling of a door quietly closing, maybe not slammed, maybe it doesn't even latch all the way, but it closes. And something you thought would always be there, someone perhaps or something, is now just memory. You're not even sure when it happened. It might have slipped away slowly. Or maybe it was sudden. A job, a friend, a sense of identity. But now, in the stillness of night, the echo of that absence is louder than you expected. This is where Epictetus begins, not with grand proclamations but with simple truths whispered into discomfort. He reminds you, gently but firmly, that what disturbs you isn't the thing itself. It's your opinion of it, your attachment to it, your insistence that it stay. So you sit with that, the sting of losing something, and you try, perhaps for the first time, to lose it without becoming lost yourself. You remember Epictetus didn't own much. He had no house, no title. Born a slave, crippled, freed later, yes, but never obsessed with ownership. In fact, he warned against it, because ownership tricks you. It whispers that this is mine, and with that whisper comes fear, fear of losing it. And fear, he would say, is the true prison. There's a part of you that wants to go back to undo the thing that's already happened. But there's also a deeper part, smaller but sturdier, that wants to understand. Not fix, just understand. So you listen. You recall how even Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor, would write by candlelight, journaling about how little he controlled. The weather, the wars, the betrayals, the sickness. He called it nature's course. And every night he returned not to control it, but to understand his place inside of it. You shift slightly in bed. There's something oddly comforting about not being the master of the universe, about just being one wave among many. The world will keep changing, no matter how tightly you try to hold it still. The Stoics don't ask you to stop loving. They simply ask that your love not become a cage, that your plans not become handcuffs, that your identity not depend on something someone else could take away. And yes, that's hard. Losing hurts. But maybe tonight you can see loss not as a hole torn into your life, but as a doorway. Something opens as something closes, something simpler, something lighter. You breathe. Not to chase something, just to be here. You notice how your thoughts cling to what's gone, almost like a child tugging on a parent's sleeve, begging them not to leave. But the grown-up part of you, the philosopher inside, places a hand on your shoulder and whispers, "It's okay. Let it go, you're still here." This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about realizing you are more than what you've lost. That the flame of you burns quietly beneath all the noise, and no one, not time, not betrayal, not even death, can blow it out. Even the loss that breaks your voice mid-sentence. Even that. You trace the edge of this idea in your mind like a smooth stone. The only thing you truly own is your power to choose how to respond. So you begin to loosen your grip, not just on what's gone, but on the belief that it had to stay, on the belief that its absence defines you. You see, Epictetus would say, if you've lost something outside of your control, you've lost nothing that truly belongs to you. And in this strange, tender paradox there is peace. Maybe tonight you don't have to solve anything. Maybe it's enough to rest in that awareness, to hold your own thoughts gently the way you'd hold a fragile shell in the dark, without squeezing, without fear. Outside, the wind shifts. Or maybe it's just the fan. But either way, the world keeps moving. You, however, have slowed. And in this slowness, you are beginning to feel a deeper kind of safety, one that doesn't depend on anything staying the same. A small smile might form, or maybe not. But inside you, there's less noise now, less argument with reality. You are learning slowly, patiently to lose without becoming lost. You lie still for a while, letting the silence settle. It's not the absence of sound that soothes you, but the absence of struggle. And as your body sinks deeper into rest, a new idea begins to form in your thoughts, quiet but unmistakable. You can't lose what isn't yours. At first, this seems sharp, even cold, like the kind of advice someone offers too quickly, too cleanly when they don't know your pain. But this isn't dismissal. It's a deeper kind of wisdom, one that asks you to question the very roots of possession. Tonight, you remember something that once felt like yours. Maybe a watch your father gave you, or a city you once called home. Maybe a routine or a version of yourself from years ago. All of it felt permanent until it wasn't. And when it left, you felt not just grief but disorientation, like a compass needle spinning without north. But now, with the calm of night around you, you're beginning to see that your suffering wasn't caused by the thing itself, but by the illusion that it was ever truly yours to begin with. Epictetus was clear about this. We must separate what belongs to us from what does not. Our judgments, our choices, our reactions, these are truly ours. But objects, status, bodies, even relationships, they are only ever borrowed. Temporary assignments, not permanent entitlements. You think of the story of Cleans, the Stoic who once lost everything in a storm at sea. His friends found him later, calm as moonlight. When asked how he could be so at peace after losing all he had, he smiled and replied, "I only lost what was not truly mine." It wasn't that he didn't care. It's that he cared more about how he lived than about what he owned. You breathe in deeply now. There's something radical about that mindset. Not cold detachment, but fierce clarity. The kind that sees loss not as punishment, but as natural, inevitable, and survivable. And strangely, when you stop clinging to what isn't yours, what's left becomes clearer, simpler. You remember how children play with toys. For a moment, it's the center of their world. But when it breaks or is taken, they cry briefly. And then just like that, they move on. Their joy is tied not to the object itself, but to the play, the experience, the moment. What if you could live like that? Not frivolously, but with open hands. Loving deeply, but without trying to trap anything in permanence. There's a paradox here, and you feel it now, soft as breath. The less you try to possess life, the more fully you can live it. You recall a time when something was taken from you, maybe a plan unraveled or someone left before you were ready. At the time, it felt like a theft. But now, looking back, can you see how that space, painful as it was, made room for something new? Not immediately, but eventually. And even if nothing better came, didn't you survive it? Didn't you grow? Tonight, Epictetus would ask you not to be heartless, but to be free. Not to reject the world, but to love it without illusion. The truth is, nothing outside your mind truly belongs to you. And yet, your mind, your will, your ability to choose, that is a treasure no one can steal. You turn slightly, maybe adjusting your pillow, maybe just responding to that thought in your body. Your heartbeat slows. There's something incredibly grounding in being reminded of what is yours and what is not. You begin to notice how often the world tries to sell permanence. Relationships, roles, lifestyles, things. But the Stoics were never interested in forever. They were interested in now, in what you do with this moment, no matter how much has been taken. And here comes the gentle joke. The more you try to hold tightly, the more things slip through your fingers. But when you loosen your grip, when you see things for what they are, temporary guests, you can finally enjoy them without fear. Let that sink in. The coffee mug you sip every morning, the sweater that still smells like someone you miss, the dreams you once held tight, They all pass through you like water through open hands, and yet your hands remain. Isn't that strange comfort? You are still here, still breathing, still capable of responding wisely even now. And when you look inside yourself, beneath the wanting, beneath the hurt, what do you find? A kind of space. Wide, quiet, unbreakable. That is what's yours. That's your citadel. It's strange how grief softens when you stop calling things mine. The world becomes less like a battlefield and more like a tide. Things come, things go, but you remain the shore. There will always be things you'll lose. But if you can learn to let go without closing your heart, if you can lose without becoming bitter, then you've won something far greater. And tonight, in this moment, that truth is resting beside you like a trusted friend. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to solve or plan or brace for tomorrow. You only have to remember you cannot lose what was never truly yours. And that's not emptiness. That's freedom. There's a breeze in your thoughts now, barely there but real. Something loosening. You've begun to see how what you cling to often clings back. And now, as the night deepens and your body relaxes further into the bed, another layer peels back. A new question rises like mist. What do I think the world owes me? It's a strange question, one you don't ask out loud, but one that shows itself in the little disappointments. A friend didn't show up. A plan fell through. Life zigged when you were counting on a zag. And there, quietly underneath the surface, is a sense of this isn't fair. But tonight, we look at that phrase, not with judgment, just curiosity. Epictetus said you suffer more from your expectations than from reality itself. And in many ways, expectations are just silent contracts we think the world signed, without ever asking it to. You expected the job to last. You expected the love to stay. You expected people to understand. But the world is not a custom service. It's more like a wild river, beautiful but indifferent. It doesn't owe you calm waters. It doesn't promise warm days. It only promises what it's always given, change. You lie still now, perhaps remembering a moment you were let down. It hurt. Of course it did. But what if you could strip that pain down to its source, not the event itself, but the expectation it violated? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." The same can be said for disappointment. When life breaks your picture of how it should be, can you turn inward not to blame but to rebalance? You think of a time someone made a promise and broke it. You held that promise close like a compass. But maybe it wasn't the broken word that hurt the most. Maybe it was the version of the future you'd quietly built around it. And when it collapsed, so did the scaffolding of your comfort. The Stoics wouldn't tell you not to dream. But they'd warn you, don't marry the dream, travel with it lightly. Know that it may change names, faces, forms. And here comes another paradox, one of those quiet truths the Stoics loved. The less you expect from the world, the more it surprises you, not with grand gestures, but with small mercies, a stranger's kindness, a sunset you didn't plan, a moment of laughter during a hard day. When you stop expecting life to be fair, you start seeing where it's already generous. You remember Epictetus himself wasn't given anything resembling a fair start. Born a slave, crippled from youth. And yet he became one of the most powerful philosophers in history, not because he controlled his fate, but because he mastered his attitude toward it. What would it mean for you, right now, to release just one expectation? Maybe not all of them, just one. The idea that someone owes you closure. The idea that the world should have given you something by now. The idea that if you suffer, it must mean something is broken. You're not weak for having those expectations. You're human, but strength begins when you see them and choose to soften. Even now, lying here, you can feel the quiet tension of wanting things to be different. And yet, the room is what it is. The silence is what it is. The night has not betrayed you. It simply continues with or without your permission. And that's okay. You start to sense the space between things, the pause between breaths, the crack in a thought that lets something deeper shine through. Maybe you realize you're not actually in a battle with the world. You're in a conversation, and the world has been whispering something you've only just begun to hear. Live without demanding. And in return, it offers peace. Not guaranteed, not eternal, but possible. Available in this very moment. You smile a little now, because deep down you understand life owes you nothing. But you owe yourself the grace to keep going without bitterness. There's a kind of pride in that, not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you didn't collapse, even when things didn't go your way. It's not weakness to be disappointed, but it's strength to keep walking anyway, to keep your center calm while the world tilts. And you begin to see, fair or unfair, the world has never really been the point. You have, how you carry yourself through it. How you choose to meet each wave with clenched fists or open hands. You lie back now, more at ease than before. Your breath has slowed. There's nothing more to expect. Only this moment, only this stillness. You've let go just a little of what you thought the world owed you. And in that space, something beautiful returns, freedom. It begins as a memory, or maybe just the outline of one. A voice, a warmth, a closeness that once made you feel like you were enough. Someone you loved, not with restraint, but with a full heart. And now that love feels distant. Not gone, perhaps, but changed. Like a song you can still hum, though the words escape you. Tonight you sit quietly with that feeling. The ache of love no longer held the same way. The subtle grief of change, of drifting. And here the Stoics offer a teaching most people misunderstand. They never said, don't love. They said, don't cling. You close your eyes, or maybe just soften your gaze, and you start to feel the difference. Love is expansive. Clinging is tight. Love opens the hand. Clinging curls it into a fist. You remember how Epictetus warned not against affection, but against the illusion of ownership. He used the metaphor of a broken jug. If you're going to love a thing, he said, you must love it with full awareness that it can be broken, taken, lost. That way, if it ever happens, you're not shattered. You're simply returning the jug to the shelf it came from. Tonight, you apply that idea to the people in your life. You think of someone dear to you, maybe someone you've lost, or someone who's changed, someone you've tried to hold onto in your thoughts. You did everything right, didn't you? You cared, you showed up, you hoped. But even so, they've drifted, and now you're here, quiet, wondering what it all means. The pain of that distance isn't weakness. It's the cost of having loved openly. But now the question is, can you continue loving without needing to hold on? The Stoics would challenge you here, not harshly but directly. They'd ask, is your love generous, or is it possession dressed in poetry? And you'd pause. Because you know in some small way you've loved in order to keep. Loved in order to stay safe. Loved in order to not be alone. But love, true love, can't be a cage, not for the other person. And not for you. You shift under your blanket. Something in your chest relaxes, not in resignation but in recognition. You can still love someone deeply and let them go. Let them change. Let them become who they need to become, even if that version of them no longer walks beside you. You remember the story of Seneca who lost his beloved child. He grieved, yes, but he also wrote about how nature lends us people, not gives them. We are all visitors in each other's lives. That's not meant to rob you of connection, but to deepen it. Because when you understand love as a gift and not a guarantee, every moment becomes more sacred. Every shared laugh, every gentle touch, every unspoken understanding, none of it is owed. All of it is grace. You take a breath. You see now, clinging turns love into a contract. Letting go turns it into freedom. You can still think of them, still miss them, still wish things had ended differently. But you no longer need their presence to justify your own. You still love, but it's no longer a weight. It's a warmth, a quiet, enduring light inside you. There's a paradox again. The Stoics were full of them. You only lose someone when you believe you own them. And you begin to see how freeing it is to simply witness love, to experience it without capture, like watching a bird on a branch, beautiful because you know it may fly away at any moment. It doesn't mean you don't feel the sadness. You do. But you're learning that sadness is part of loving without conditions, part of living openly in a world of impermanence. Your thoughts slow now. You no longer replay the conversations. The what-ifs. You're not trying to rewrite history. You're simply present with the truth of what is. And what is enough. Because you've remembered something vital, you are still whole, even in the absence of the other. You lie still, wrapped not just in a blanket but in a gentle understanding. Love doesn't demand permanence. It only asks that you show up fully while it lasts. And when it changes or leaves or transforms, you don't have to collapse. You can grieve, you can remember, and then you can continue. The love you gave wasn't wasted. It never is because it shaped you, not just them. So now let that love sit gently beside you, not tugging at you, not demanding return. Just present, like a candle left burning in a quiet room. You've loved, and you still can. And this time maybe you'll love with open hands. Somewhere along the way you learn to fear death. Not because of pain, perhaps, but because of what it meant. An end. A loss. A great unknown that no one can explain but everyone must face. And yet tonight, in the quiet of your own thoughts, death feels less like a threat and more like a teacher. You lie in the dark, and instead of flinching at the idea, you turn gently toward it. Not to rush it, not to obsess over it, but to understand it just a little more. Epictetus spoke often of death, not with dread but with clarity. To him, death was not a catastrophe. It was simply nature doing what nature always does, changing forms, returning matter, closing loops. He compared death to a ship returning to port or a traveler finishing their journey. Not something to be feared, just something to be understood. You think of someone who's no longer here. Their face, their voice, maybe even their scent, it still lingers in your memory. At times, that memory has brought you comfort. At other times, sharpness. The kind that stings when you're alone and missing something you can't ever hold again. But tonight, you let that memory come without resistance. You don't reach for it. You just allow it to sit quietly beside you. Because Epictetus would remind you, they weren't yours to keep. No one is. We come into each other's lives like waves meeting on the shore. For a moment, our patterns overlap, and then the tides pull us apart. This is not cruelty. This is the rhythm of all living things. The Stoics didn't ask you to be unfeeling. They knew loss would shake you. They knew grief would sometimes bring you to your knees. But they taught that even grief is a space where wisdom can grow. You recall the story of Epictetus himself, who once comforted a friend mourning the death of his child. He didn't say, "Don't cry." He said, "Cry, just don't cry in despair. Cry because you loved." You feel the weight of that sentence now. There's strength in tears that flow from love. They wash, not weaken. And tonight, yours are gentle if they come at all. Death, you realize, is not the enemy. Forgetting how to live is. And in a strange twist of fate, the awareness of death, the clarity that this ride is temporary, is what makes everything more vivid. The way light filters through your window in the morning, the laughter of someone you care about, the taste of something sweet, all of it becomes a miracle when you remember. It will not last. But instead of sorrow, that thought brings peace, because you begin to feel the freedom in impermanence. You don't have to make something last forever. You don't have to hold on to every moment. You only have to be here while you can. You shift in bed, gently, as if to acknowledge the quiet presence of mortality without pushing it away. You're not in danger, you're not in crisis. You're simply awake to the truth that has always been here. And that truth doesn't haunt you tonight, it steadies you. It whispers, nothing was promised, everything is gift, even your breath right now, even the stillness that surrounds you, even the thought that death might not be darkness but return, like the wave retreating to the sea, not ending, just becoming something else. You think of how the Stoics compared life to a role in a play. You don't get to choose the script, only how well you perform it. When your time on stage ends, you bow not in regret but in completion. That image stays with you, a final bow, humble and proud. And suddenly you don't fear death as a thief. You respect it as a companion. It walks beside you not to hurry you but to remind you this moment matters. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. You close your eyes again now, but with a different kind of stillness. You're not resisting the passage of time. You're not mourning what hasn't yet happened. You're simply here, alive, aware, and held by something larger than fear. You remember a simple, strange truth. To fear death is to fear the most natural part of life. And you begin to see that if you can make peace with that, if you can sit calmly with that final uncertainty, then you can face anything. The next loss, the next goodbye, even the end of things you once thought permanent, because nothing truly ends. It just transforms. And in this moment you have not been lost, you've been found. There's a kind of silence that follows loss, not the loud, crying kind, but the quieter one. The kind where your identity feels thinner, where something you used to say about yourself no longer applies. You lie here now in that quiet, wondering who you are without the titles, without the job, without the relationship, without the role you used to play so well. It's unsettling at first. Identity has a way of wrapping itself around what we do, who we're with, what we're known for. And when any of that is stripped away, you're left floating, unmoored. But here's the question Epictetus would whisper to you now. Who are you without your labels? He'd challenge you, lovingly, firmly, to peel them off one by one and see what remains. You're not your job title. That can be taken in an afternoon. You're not your beauty, your youth, your body. All of that changes with time. You're not your successes or your failures. They live in the past. You're not what others think of you. That's their perception, not your reality. So what's left? You shift slightly, letting that question echo in your thoughts. In the absence of all roles, there is still you. The you who chooses, the you who reflects, the you who sits with discomfort instead of running from it. The Stoics believed this core self, your faculty of reason, your will, your moral compass, is the only part of you that's truly yours. Everything else is just borrowed costume. You remember the story of Agrippinus, a Stoic senator under Nero. One day he was told he was to be executed for not flattering the emperor. His response? Calm, measured. He continued with his daily routine. When asked why he didn't protest or panic, he said, "I will not be an imitator of tragedy, but a good man at a feast." It sounds absurd at first, but there's a freedom in it. If someone can face their own death without abandoning who they are, then surely you can face the shedding of a title without collapsing. You breathe deeply now. You remember a time in your life when you introduced yourself differently. A different name, a different job, a different role. At the time, it felt like you. And now it feels like a chapter from a book you've already closed. That's not failure, that's growth. The Stoics would tell you. If you don't know who you are without your title, you never really knew who you were in the first place. Let that sink in. Your identity doesn't need to be wrapped in achievements or belonging. Your deepest self is revealed not in your resume, but in how you respond when all of that is gone. Do you hold integrity? Do you speak gently to yourself? Do you remain curious even now? If so, then you haven't lost who you are. You've simply lost the furniture around it. You think of how storms strip trees bare. The leaves go first, then maybe a branch or two, but the roots remain. The trunk stands. Weathered perhaps, but still grounded. You are like that. Even now, even without the title that used to announce you, you remain. You might whisper to yourself, "I am still here." It's such a simple sentence, but one that carries so much quiet power. You are not the image others had of you. You are not the story you once told to feel important. You are not the applause, the attention, or the praise. You are the stillness beneath it all. There's a paradox the Stoics loved. Only when you stop needing to be somebody can you finally be yourself. You feel that truth now, not in words but in sensation. Something softens in your chest. You stop trying to prove your worth to the night. You no longer need to rehearse your importance in your head, because being is enough. Existing consciously, peacefully, without pretense, that is your most honest title. And what freedom there is in that. You can carry it anywhere, into every room, through every loss, even into the quietest parts of yourself. There's no one you have to be tonight, no name you have to live up to, only a soul resting in truth. You are not your title, you never were. There's a moment, not dramatic, not loud, when you finally whisper to yourself, it's time to let go. And it doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. You're here tonight with something in your hands, something broken, something heavy, a story you've told yourself 1,000 times, a version of life that didn't unfold the way you imagined. Maybe it's a dream that didn't come true. Maybe it's a grudge that's hardened into identity. Maybe it's a should have been you can't stop replaying. You've carried it for so long that you've forgotten what your hands feel like when they're empty. But now tonight, there's a softness inside you, a quiet readiness. The moment before letting go, Epictetus would not rush you. He'd sit beside you calmly and ask a simple question. What are you afraid will happen if you put this down? You pause. At first the fear is vague. If you let go, will it mean you've given up? Will it mean it didn't matter? Will it mean you were wrong? But then the deeper truth appears slowly. You're afraid of the space it will leave behind. Because the things we hold, whether joyful or painful, become part of how we define ourselves. And without them, who are we? The Stoics had an answer to that, and it wasn't complicated. You are free. That space you fear is not emptiness, it's possibility. You think now of someone long ago who chose to let go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Maybe it was someone who ended a relationship before it turned toxic, or someone who stepped down from power because they knew it no longer served their values, someone who chose silence instead of revenge, someone who walked away from what glittered to walk toward what was real. These are not stories of failure, they are stories of wisdom. You remember Epictetus' metaphor, life is like a banquet, dishes come your way, some stay longer than others. Some are delicious, others not so much. But you don't reach across the table, you don't grab. You take what's offered, and when it's removed, you let it go. This isn't passivity, it's elegance. Letting go is not weakness, it's the ultimate expression of strength. You begin to notice what you've been clenching mentally, emotionally. That memory, that role, that regret. And suddenly your grip begins to loosen. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it has finished its purpose. Not all burdens are meant to be carried forever. Some are meant to be acknowledged, honored, and then released. You breathe in, and as you exhale, you say, perhaps silently, it's okay now. And you believe it. There's no need to drag every version of yourself forward. You've grown. You've changed. And it's okay to say goodbye to the parts of you that no longer fit. There's a beautiful paradox waiting for you again. You don't lose your strength by surrendering. You reveal it, to admit, this no longer serves me. To say, I was wrong. To choose peace over pride. Each of these is a letting go. And each one makes room for what matters more. You imagine now what your life might feel like without the weight you've carried. How light your steps might be. How gentle your heart could become. You aren't abandoning anything important. You're simply releasing what can't follow you into the next part of your journey. There's a reason why your body relaxes when you unclench your hands, why your breath deepens when you stop fighting the current. This is what the Stoics called aligning with nature, not forcing, not resisting, just allowing. And allowing is not giving up, it's giving in to what is. The truth is, the things you've tried to grip tightly were never truly yours to keep. Not the outcome, not the person, not even the version of life you imagined. So tonight you stand at a threshold, one hand still holding, one hand already open. You don't have to rush. You don't have to be ready all at once. But with each breath, with each gentle shift of awareness, you let go. Not with sorrow, but with gratitude, because what's gone taught you something. And now what remains is this, a clearer you, a freer you. A you that no longer needs to control every detail because you've learned to trust the process. And as you rest here, a new kind of strength fills the space where the struggle used to live. You've let go, and you are still here, still whole, still strong. There's a kind of freedom you begin to feel, not loud or triumphant, but subtle, like sunlight slowly filling a room. A freedom that doesn't need fireworks or fanfare. It simply exists quietly in the absence of resistance. Tonight, you're beginning to understand what inner freedom really means. It's not about escaping responsibilities. It's not about isolating yourself from pain or people. It's not even about having everything go your way. It's about something simpler, something deeper. It's about being free within yourself, even when the world outside feels uncontrollable. Epictetus called this kind of freedom the only true form. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And you start to see that clearly now, lying here in the stillness, because you've felt the opposite, haven't you? The times you were outwardly free, but inwardly trapped. Trapped in comparison, in craving, in fear of judgment, in anxiety about what others might say, think, do. You may have had choices, but no peace. So tonight you go inward. You ask the question that few people dare to ask in the quiet of their own mind. Am I the one guiding my life, or am I constantly reacting? It's humbling to sit with. You notice how easily your mood can be stolen by a single comment, how quickly you can spiral because of a delay, a rejection, a small detour. You see how easily your joy becomes hostage to things you can't control. But here's the quiet revelation. You don't have to live that way. Inner freedom means this. You get to choose how you respond, always. Even when you don't choose the situation, you still choose the stance. It sounds small, but it's everything. You think of Viktor Frankl, the psychologist and Holocaust survivor who built an entire philosophy from this one truth. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies your power. The Stoics lived in that space. They trained their minds not to escape life, but to meet it with steadiness. They weren't chasing a life without storms. They were becoming people who could walk through storms without being broken by them. And so can you. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but steadily. It begins with tiny acts of defiance, not against others, but against your own inner chaos. You resist the urge to complain when things go wrong. You hold your tongue instead of snapping in anger. You recognize fear without letting it make your choices for you. You lose something, and instead of collapsing, you observe. Each act is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows with use. This is the core of Stoic practice. Master yourself and nothing can enslave you. You might smile here, because somewhere deep down you've always known this. That power doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from no longer needing to. You recall Epictetus again, who was once a slave in body but freer in spirit than most emperors. He understood that freedom was not about circumstance. It was about sovereignty of mind. Even if they chained his hands, they could not chain his thoughts. You feel that now in your own way. Perhaps your chains are invisible, but real. Expectations, past wounds, old narratives. But tonight you hold the key. And that key is choice. Not the choice of what happens, but the choice of how you meet what happens. You start to see the difference between freedom and impulse, between doing whatever you want and doing what is right. The first is easy. The second is earned, because self-mastery isn't about denial, it's about direction. You steer yourself, gently, steadily, toward truth, not noise, toward peace, not approval. And in that movement you reclaim something. You reclaim yourself. That is inner freedom, and it is always available, even here, even now. You lie back, maybe breathing a little easier, not because life is solved, but because you're no longer trying to wrestle it into submission. You're learning to respond instead of react, to choose instead of chase, to hold yourself steady in a world that often spins. That's real power. And tonight, in the quiet of this moment, it's yours. No one can give it to you. No one can take it away. You're free, not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer ruled by what isn't. And as the night deepens, that truth settles into you like warmth. You are not what happens to you. You are how you meet it. There's something strange about control. It feels safest when we grip tightly, but somehow the tighter we grip, the more unstable everything seems. You've felt that, haven't you? Trying to control how others see you. Trying to shape every outcome. Trying to predict every twist of the future so nothing can surprise or hurt you. And yet, despite all your effort, surprises still come. People still change. Life still unfolds its own way. Tonight, we sit with that. Not to shame ourselves for wanting control, but to gently unlearn the parts of us that believed control was ever possible in the first place. The Stoics didn't say, give up. They said, know what's yours. And that's the beginning of peace. You lie here now with your breath steady, your thoughts softening, and a deeper awareness starting to form. Most of your suffering comes from trying to manage things that don't belong to you, like the weather, like someone's opinion, like how long something lasts, like whether or not life rewards you the way you expected. Epictetus taught that the path to serenity begins with a simple act, division. You divide the world into two lists, what you can control, what you can't. And once you've done that honestly, you stop wasting energy on the second list. You think now about how much time you've spent spinning in anxiety. What if this goes wrong? What if they don't like me? What if I fail? What if I lose? So much, what if? But how often did those thoughts change the outcome? Rarely. And how often did they rob you of presence, of sleep, of peace? Almost always. You breathe deeper now, as if letting that truth reach all the way into your shoulders. Imagine this. Instead of planning for every possible failure, you practice trust in your ability to respond if things don't go your way. Not control, capacity. That's where your power lies, not in fixing the world but in being prepared to face it well. You think now of a ship captain. She cannot control the wind or the waves, but she can control the sails, the rudder, her posture, her direction. That's you. You cannot command the storm, but you can sail with grace through it. That's what the Stoics called living according to nature, not dominating life but cooperating with it. Like a dancer adjusting to rhythm, like a tree that bends instead of breaking. And here comes another paradox. The more you focus on what's within your control, the more power you actually have. Because your mind is yours, your effort is yours, your decisions, your tone of voice, your response to pain, all of it deeply yours. No one can take that. Even in a prison, you can choose your attitude. Even in illness, you can choose courage. Even in heartbreak, you can choose compassion. You start to feel it now, not like a sudden victory, but a slow release. You stop trying to fix the story. You start tending to the storyteller. That's you. You remember a recent moment when you were frustrated because something didn't go your way. And in that moment, your energy turned outward. Blaming, resisting, spiraling. But what if next time you paused and asked, is this in my control? And if the answer is no, you release. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to protect your peace. It's not indifference. It's wisdom. Epictetus compared life to playing a role in a play. You don't get to choose your part, but you can choose to perform it with excellence, dignity, clarity. Some nights your role is joyful. Some nights it's difficult. Tonight your role is rest. And part of resting well is remembering you're not in charge of the script. You're only responsible for how you show up. You adjust the sails. You hold the rudder steady. You breathe. And you let go of everything else. You don't need the future to obey you. You only need to be ready to meet it, fully present, fully you. And that is enough. It's strange how often we wait for the right time, for clarity, for the apology, for the fear to fade. You may be lying here tonight with something unfinished resting in your chest, not a task, but a longing, a conversation unsaid, a path unlived, a version of yourself you keep postponing because it never feels like now is the right time. But the Stoics would nudge you gently with this thought: you're already in the arena. There is no dress rehearsal, no prelude, no someday when you'll suddenly become fearless, ready, enlightened. There is only now, this moment, this breath, this life. You might feel that subtle pressure society teaches. Wait until you're confident. Wait until you've perfected yourself. Wait until everyone approves. But Epictetus reminds us, you become brave by doing brave things, not by thinking about them. You might smile at the simplicity of it, how action, even clumsy, builds the very strength you thought you needed before starting. The Stoics believed we become what we practice. So if you wait to act until you no longer feel fear, you're practicing hesitation, not courage. You remember now a time you leapt, maybe imperfectly, maybe messily, but you tried. And though you didn't control the outcome, something inside you grew just from the attempt. That's the heart of Stoic progress, not perfection but participation. You enter the day like a warrior entering the field, not to win every battle but to fight well, to show up honestly, to refine the soul through the doing. You reflect now on Marcus Aurelius, writing his meditations by lamplight during war, not because he had free time, not because life was gentle, but because self-examination does not wait for convenience. He didn't ask, "Do I feel ready to face this day?" He asked, "How can I live well despite its trials?" And so can you, even if you're tired, even if your voice shakes, even if the results don't come quickly. Progress isn't measured in achievements, it's measured in presence, in resilience, in the quiet refusal to abandon yourself. You lie here now, maybe still afraid. That's okay. The Stoics never asked you to eliminate fear. They simply asked you not to be ruled by it. Imagine your fear as a horse. Wild, loud, powerful, you can't kill it, you can't ignore it, but you can learn to ride it. You place the saddle with trembling hands. You climb on, and you steer, not away from the fear but through it. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It's your decision to keep moving, even when fear walks beside you. And what happens when you do? You realize the fear was never the end of the road, it was the gate. Beyond it, something truer, not necessarily easier but more aligned. So what are you waiting for? Permission. The Stoics would tell you. You already have it. You are allowed to begin imperfectly, allowed to speak kindly even when you're unsure, allowed to outgrow what no longer fits, allowed to choose peace even when anger is easier. Life isn't asking for your perfection, just your participation. You take a breath now and you feel it, a stirring not of certainty but of readiness, not the loud, bold kind, but the quiet kind that whispers, "It's time." Time to forgive what you can't rewrite. Time to honor your growth even when no one else sees it. Time to trust that your small steps count. Because they do. The Stoics taught, the greatest victories are not over the world, but over yourself. So tonight you close your eyes knowing that by simply showing up, here, now, present in this moment, you've already taken a step. You've entered the arena, and that is enough. You lie here now, surrounded by stillness, but inside you feel the subtle weight of judgment, not from others, from yourself. That voice in your head, the one that picks apart what you said earlier, the one that replays how you could have done more, been better, gotten further by now. It's relentless sometimes, isn't it? That internal critic who's always unsatisfied. But tonight, let's question it. Not with defiance, with curiosity. What makes you think you're supposed to be more than you are right now? Epictetus would remind you that harsh self-judgment isn't the sign of a virtuous soul. It's the sign of a confused one. You've mistaken striving for self-worth. You've turned the desire to improve into a weapon against yourself. And in doing so, you've missed something vital. You don't need to hate yourself to grow. You can be both a work in progress and worthy of compassion. You pause at that thought, because maybe no one ever said that to you, not in a way that sank in. Maybe you grew up thinking that achievement made you lovable, that guilt was necessary for growth, that if you let go of self-criticism you'd become lazy, soft, lost. But the Stoics saw things differently. They spoke of self-examination, yes, but not self-punishment. Marcus Aurelius wrote not to berate himself but to realign himself. His reflections were acts of care, of tending, of remembering what matters, not shaming what didn't. Tonight, you do the same. You lie here not to scold your past self, but to speak to them. Gently, clearly, you recall a mistake, a moment you wish had gone differently, and instead of tightening your jaw or clenching your fists, you breathe into it. You meet it the way a parent meets a frightened child, not with anger but with steadiness. Because what if your mistakes weren't signs of failure, but invitations to awareness? You don't need to erase your past to honor your future. The Stoics would say, you are not your worst moment. You are what you choose now, and you are choosing presence. That matters. You think now of a paradox, the kind the Stoics loved. The more you accept your flaws, the more power you have to change. Not because you've given up, but because you've stopped wasting energy on shame. Shame freezes, acceptance moves. You can learn without self-loathing. You can reflect without spiraling. You can grow because you love who you're becoming, not because you hate who you've been. So ask yourself, is the voice in your head helping you become wiser or just louder? If it's just noise, you can quiet it, not with force but with truth. The truth that you're not behind, the truth that you're not broken, the truth that you're not late. You're on your path, no one else's, and your pace is your own. You lie a little more comfortably now, as if the bed itself honors your effort. Because trying to live well, especially in a noisy, impatient world, is a sacred effort. And you're doing it. Not perfectly, but earnestly. That counts. The Stoics didn't ask you to be flawless. They asked you to be honest. So you name where you've strayed, you name what still hurts, and then you return to yourself, again and again. You let each night be a small reset, a return to your values, a chance to lay down judgment and pick up understanding. Because no matter how far you've wandered, the way back is always the same: awareness, compassion, choice. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who notices them. And that space between reaction and response, that's your freedom. So tonight, rest not in the illusion of perfection, but in the truth of your effort. You are here. You are trying. You are allowed to be proud of that. The night feels quieter now, not just around you, but inside you. You're no longer bracing, not running mental simulations, not calculating your next step before this one has even landed. For the first time in a while, you are just here. And in that presence, something else arises: stillness. Not boredom, not numbness. Stillness, the kind that holds space without rushing to fill it. The Stoics believed this was the birthplace of wisdom, that only in stillness can we see clearly. Not just the world, but ourselves. You think now of Marcus Aurelius again, rising before dawn to write, while the empire waited outside his chamber. His notes weren't public speeches, they were reminders to himself: be still, observe, resist the urge to react. You feel that now. The urge to react is powerful, isn't it? Someone criticizes you, you want to defend. Someone else succeeds, you want to compare. Life doesn't go your way, you want to rage, to grasp, to flail. But tonight, you resist none of it. You simply observe. That's the power of stillness, not the absence of thought, but the gentle refusal to be swept away by it. It's like standing on the shore watching waves crash, but not stepping into the tide. The Stoics called this the practice of apatheia, not apathy, but equanimity. A state in which the soul remains unshaken, not because it's cold, but because it's anchored. And your anchor tonight is attention. You begin to notice more: the coolness of your pillow, the subtle rhythm of your breathing, the way your mind softens when you stop wrestling with it. And with that attention, you gain something better than control. You gain clarity. You begin to see which thoughts are yours and which are just echoes of fear, habit, or expectation. You begin to see which desires lead to peace and which ones endlessly multiply. You begin to see that much of what you've chased wasn't wrong, it just wasn't you. And when you're still, the truth of you has room to speak, not in shouts. In whispers, you might hear it say things like, "You don't need to be everything to everyone. You're allowed to rest. You've already done enough for today." Stillness reveals what striving hides. And in that stillness, you're reminded that your value isn't in motion. It's in presence. You are enough even when you're not producing, even when you're not proving, even when you're simply lying here breathing aware. That's the paradox again. The most powerful self isn't the one that dominates, but the one that observes without needing to control. And that's who you are tonight. Not a person panicking for answers, a soul resting in awareness. It's from this space that right action flows, not from frenzy but from clarity. You don't have to force peace. You only have to stop interrupting it. Let go of the need to interpret every silence. Let go of the compulsion to narrate every moment. Let go of the idea that wisdom is a lightning bolt. Often, it's a slow sunrise. You lie here now, trusting that clarity will return, not because you chase it, but because you made space for it. Like water clearing when the mud settles. Stillness isn't a destination, it's a practice. And tonight you are practicing. With every exhale, you loosen your grip on needing to figure everything out. You're not wasting time by resting. You're remembering who you are beneath the noise. A steady mind, a clear heart, a quiet soul that doesn't need the world to be quiet in order to be still. Not all noise comes from outside. Sometimes the loudest voices are the ones inside your own mind, doubts disguised as logic, fears dressed up as preparation. They show up quietly at first. What if I can't handle it? What if I make the wrong choice? What if it all falls apart again? And in response, you try to plan, predict, perfect. But the Stoics would smile gently and ask you something different. What if you trusted yourself instead? Not because you know everything, but because you can handle whatever comes next. You shift a little as you lie there, because that suggestion feels both radical and oddly familiar. Trust myself, without knowing the outcome. Yes, because life isn't a riddle to be solved before you begin. It's a road you learn by walking. Epictetus taught that the wise person prepares, not by scripting every detail of the future, but by becoming the kind of person who can meet any future with composure. You don't need to predict the weather if you've built a house that can hold steady in the storm. And that house, it's your character, your discipline, your values, your ability to pause, observe, and choose wisely, especially when it's hard. These are the parts of you that endure, even when circumstances shift. You remember now a time when something unexpected happened, something painful, disappointing, or completely out of line with your plans. And yet, you survived. Maybe even grew, not because it didn't hurt, but because some deeper part of you stepped up. The Stoics believed in that part of you, not your resume, not your reputation, but your ruling faculty, that inner decision-maker that remains untouched by the chaos of the world. It's always been there, they said. You just forget to trust it. So tonight, you do. You breathe in and meet your uncertainty with calm. You feel the tension of not knowing, but you don't rush to escape it. Because confidence isn't about knowing the future. It's about knowing yourself. And you are starting to know yourself more clearly. Not in fantasy, in practice. Each time you sit with discomfort instead of fleeing it. Each time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Each time you pause when you want to react. That's trust. Not in outcomes, but in your own becoming. There's a paradox again. The more you accept that you don't control the world, the more you realize you do control how you meet it. And that is no small thing. You feel it now. A little more space in your chest. A little more room to breathe. Not because everything is solved, but because you've stopped trying to solve what doesn't need solving. You don't need a plan for every future. You need to stay present in this moment. Because from here, you will build the next one. One breath at a time. One honest choice at a time. The Stoics didn't ask for heroic leaps. They asked for consistent practice. And every moment of awareness like this one is practice. You are choosing not to panic. You are choosing not to spiral. You are choosing not to abandon yourself when things feel unclear. That choice matters, because over time it becomes who you are. Not someone who never feels doubt, but someone who knows how to walk with it. So you lie here tonight, not with all the answers, but with something better. A quiet confidence that whatever comes next, you'll face it with courage. Because you've already begun. Somewhere along the path, we begin to mistake intensity for truth. If something feels urgent, we assume it must be important. If a thought is loud, we assume it must be real. If an emotion surges, we follow it without question. But tonight, as you rest here, you begin to notice the subtle difference between what is loud and what is lasting. You felt this before, haven't you? A spike of panic that passed, a wave of anger that faded, a desperate thought that turned out to be untrue. And yet, in the moment, those experiences felt absolute. This is where the Stoics invite you to pause. To observe, not obey. To watch your thoughts like clouds passing, not commands to act upon. Because here's the truth Epictetus would gently remind you. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves your belief. You breathe with that now. Thoughts are visitors, not rulers. You don't owe them anything. Not your identity, not your attention, not your peace. And in this practice, you begin to reclaim something precious: discernment. You don't need to suppress your emotions. The Stoics never asked that. They only asked that you pause long enough to understand them, to feel anger and then ask what it's pointing to feel grief and recognize it as a mirror of your love, to feel envy and use it as a clue to your deeper values. Your emotions aren't enemies, but they are messengers, and messengers are meant to be listened to, not obeyed blindly. You think now of Seneca writing letters to a friend, speaking of how even the wisest person feels stirred, but never enslaved by emotion. He never said, "Don't feel." He said, "Feel well." And tonight that's your practice, not to numb, but to notice. You recall a moment when you reacted quickly and regretted it, and another moment when you paused, took a breath, and chose a different response. The second one didn't feel as natural, perhaps, but it felt right. That's the art of living the Stoics spoke of. Not just knowing what is good, but choosing it again and again, even when it's hard. You begin to see that your mind is not a storm to survive. It is a landscape to tend. And like any garden, it requires patience, quiet work, the willingness to pull a weed before it spreads. Tonight you are pulling a weed, that one recurring fear, that old, tight story about yourself, that belief that you're only safe when everything is certain. You see it now, clearly, and because you see it, you are no longer held by it. That's the paradox again. Freedom doesn't come from controlling your thoughts. It comes from no longer believing all of them. You lie here now with a little more spaciousness in your mind. You don't need to finish the thought or fix the feeling. You can simply observe, and in that act alone, you are practicing strength. Not the kind the world applauds, but the quiet kind that changes your life. The kind that lets you stay steady in a storm. The kind that lets you choose peace over urgency. The kind that whispers, "Not every voice in my head needs a microphone." You smile at that, not cynically but wisely, because you are starting to hear the quieter voice underneath the noise, the one that doesn't demand, doesn't rush, doesn't spiral. It just knows who you are, knows what you value, knows that tonight this moment of calm, this breath of awareness is enough. You don't need to fix your mind, you only need to befriend it. And as you lie here, doing exactly that, you realize something quietly profound. You've spent so much time trying to get your thoughts to behave. But what if you simply stopped following the ones that don't serve you and followed your breath instead? It leads you back here to stillness, to presence, to yourself. You've made it this far, not just in the story but in your own quiet journey tonight, through thought and emotion, through stillness and struggle, through letting go and holding on. Now here you are, not as someone with all the answers, but as someone who stayed with themselves breath after breath. And that is no small thing. You feel it, don't you? The shift that happens when you stop trying to fix every piece of your life and instead just sit with it, gently, fully, without fear. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of living in accordance with nature. Not nature as trees and rivers, though that too, but nature as the rhythm of life. Its cycles, its impermanence, its refusal to be controlled. Tonight you embrace that rhythm, not passively but wisely. You stop insisting that the world bend to your will. You let it be what it is, and you return to what you can be within it: calm, clear, compassionate. It's not resignation, it's reverence. You remember now everything we've touched on: how lost doesn't mean you're lost, how letting go is a kind of strength, how freedom begins in the mind, how self-trust grows in stillness, how your thoughts are not you and your worth is not up for negotiation. All of it has brought you here, to a deeper place, not above life, not beneath it, but with it, walking alongside joy and sadness, certainty and doubt, not needing to escape either, because there's no battle left, just breath and presence, and the quiet pulse of your own becoming. The Stoics knew that life was short. Epictetus said, "You are a little soul carrying around a corpse." His words weren't morbid. They were a reminder to cherish the now, to stop postponing peace, to stop outsourcing happiness, to stop waiting for a perfect moment that may never arrive. This is the moment, this breath, This quiet night where you're not being asked to achieve or impress or prove, only to be. That's the final paradox. You don't have to strive to arrive. You're already home. You are enough, not because you've done it all right, but because you've chosen presence. You are wise, not because you know everything, but because you keep choosing to learn. You are strong, not because you never feel fear, but because you face it without running. Tonight you are practicing the art of being at peace with life, not as you want it to be, but as it is. That practice will never be finished, but neither will you. And that's a beautiful thing, because what is life if not a long unfolding, a quiet unlayering of illusion, a journey not toward a fixed version of yourself, but toward a deeper, truer knowing? You let the last thoughts pass like distant clouds. No need to follow, no need to grasp. You are exactly where you need to be. And as the story draws to a close, the pace begins to soften. You lie here with a little more space in your chest, a little more stillness in your mind, a little more kindness toward the whole, imperfect, resilient self that brought you this far. Let's slow things down now. Let the story dim. Let the thoughts fade into background hum. Let the breath be your only guide. You've done well. There is nothing more to fix tonight, nothing more to chase. Only this: a quiet mind, a gentle heart, a soul at rest. So go ahead, let go, fall into rest, not as an escape, but as a return to simplicity, to peace, to yourself.